For thousands of years, humanity has chased the same invisible horizon. One generation sought gold, another sought power, another sought love and certainty, and today, millions seek manifestation, convinced that the next achievement, opportunity, or the next breakthrough will finally quiet the restless voice within. Yet history tells a different story. Kings who ruled continents died unsatisfied. Merchants who accumulated unimaginable wealth still feared losing it. Even those who seemed to possess everything often confessed to an emptiness no possession could fill. The greatest mystery has never been why people fail to obtain what they desire. The greater mystery is why so many finally obtain it, yet remain strangers to peace. This is the forgotten paradox. Every day, nearly 60,000 thoughts pass through the human mind, and for many people, most of them are strikingly similar to yesterday's. Ancient sages believed that one shift in consciousness could alter the direction of an entire lifetime, not because the world suddenly changes, but because you do. Before we continue, pause for a single honest question. If every desire you've carried throughout your life were fulfilled today, every financial worry resolved, every relationship restored, every ambition accomplished, every uncertainty removed, would your mind finally know peace? Or would it simply discover another mountain to climb, another fear to overcome, another future to control? If that thought unsettles you, stay with it, because by the end, you may realize that the greatest manifestation is not getting everything you want, but becoming someone capable of creating a wiser, happier, and more meaningful life. Chapter 1. The death of the person you no longer need to be. The ancient teachers recognized something modern culture often resists. Every human being carries an identity built from countless stories. Some were given by parents. Others came from society, success, failure, praise, disappointment, or fear. Over time, these stories harden into what feels like the self. I am too old. I am not enough. I always fail. My worth depends on what I achieve. These thoughts become invisible walls. Eventually, we mistake the prison for our home. Psychologically, this is why periods of loss can become turning points. When a career ends, a relationship changes, children leave home, health declines, or carefully laid plans collapse, the old identity loses its certainty. The ego experiences this as catastrophe because it cannot imagine life beyond the role it has been playing. Yet many ancient traditions viewed these moments differently. They believed chaos was not always the opposite of order. Sometimes chaos was simply the clearing away of an order that no longer served the soul. Nature demonstrates this lesson constantly. Forest fires appear destructive, yet many ancient forests regenerate because certain seeds only open after intense heat. Without the fire, new life never begins. The human spirit often follows the same hidden rhythm. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that change is woven into the structure of existence. The Buddha left behind the security of a royal palace before discovering the freedom he sought. Countless contemplatives withdrew into silence, not because they despised life, but because they understood that the noise surrounding them had become louder than the truth within them. Each journey began with relinquishment. Modern life encourages accumulation. Collect more possessions, more recognition, more achievements, more certainty. Ancient wisdom asked a different question. What must you release before you can become who you truly are? Sometimes the answer is fear, sometimes resentment, sometimes pride, sometimes the exhausting need to control every outcome. The fire of transformation is rarely comfortable because it burns away precisely those attachments we believe we cannot live without. Yet, when they finally fall away, something surprising often appears beneath them. Not emptiness, but clarity. Many people later describe the hardest season of their lives as the beginning of their deepest growth, not because suffering is inherently noble, but because suffering stripped away illusions that comfort had quietly protected. Loss became revelation. The alchemists insisted that gold was never created inside the furnace. It was revealed through purification. In much the same way, wisdom may not be something we acquire. It may be something uncovered after fear, pride, and false identity have been reduced to ash. Perhaps this explains why every civilization honored elders whose faces carried the marks of hardship. They understood that wrinkles often recorded victories invisible to the eye, forgiven betrayals, endured disappointments, quiet perseverance, and the courage to begin again after everything seemed lost. The greatest transformations rarely announce themselves with celebration. They begin in silence, uncertainty, and surrender. They begin when the old self can no longer continue pretending. The furnace is not your enemy. It may be your invitation. Nothing pure emerges untouched by fire. Chapter 2. The 7 Gates of Self-Mastery. Many ancient mystery schools described that awakening was not a single revelation but a lifelong initiation. Each stage prepared the seeker for the next, until wisdom became less about acquiring secret knowledge and more about becoming the kind of person who could live it. The first gate is awareness. No journey begins without seeing where you truly stand. Socrates urged his students to know thyself, because self-knowledge is the beginning of every meaningful change. Awareness means noticing your thoughts before they become habits, your emotions before they become actions, and your assumptions before they become convictions. Without awareness, life becomes automatic. With awareness, unconscious living begins to dissolve. The second gate is discipline. The ancients understood that inspiration fades, but disciplined practice quietly shapes destiny. A musician becomes skilled through repetition, not excitement. A farmer harvests because he tends the field daily, not because he wishes for abundance. Likewise, character is cultivated through countless ordinary choices. Every small act of integrity strengthens the inner architecture of the soul. The third gate is courage. Fear never disappears completely. The heroes of ancient epics were not fearless people, but individuals who continued walking despite fear. Courage is the willingness to tell the truth, release old identities, forgive old wounds, or begin again after failure. Every meaningful life eventually reaches a crossroads where comfort and growth point in different directions. The fourth gate is humility. Ancient sages consistently warned that pride blinds more effectively than ignorance. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is seeing yourself honestly. It allows you to keep learning long after others believe they already know enough. A full cup cannot receive fresh water. An open mind remains teachable throughout life. The fifth gate is patience. Modern culture celebrates speed, but nature honors rhythm. Trees require seasons. Rivers carve valleys over centuries. Human transformation also unfolds according to its own pace. Patience teaches us to remain faithful to the process, even when visible progress seems slow. Many abandon their deepest calling because they mistake delayed growth for failure. The sixth gate is faith. Faith, as many ancient traditions understood it, is not blind certainty. It is quiet trust that meaningful action is worthwhile even when outcomes remain unseen. Farmers plant seeds long before harvest appears. Sailors navigate by stars they cannot touch. Faith enables us to continue living wisely before external evidence confirms our efforts. Finally comes the seventh gate: wisdom. Wisdom is not the accumulation of information. It is the harmonious integration of everything learned through experience, humility, suffering, discipline, and love. Wisdom allows a person to respond rather than merely react, to listen before speaking, and to value what endures over what merely impresses. These 7 gates are not conquered once and forgotten. Life invites us back to them repeatedly. Every new season asks us to become aware again, disciplined again, courageous again, humble again, patient again, faithful again, and wiser than before. The mystery schools knew that the greatest temple was never built from stone. It was built within the human heart. Every challenge becomes another doorway. Every setback becomes another lesson. Every day offers another opportunity to step through one more gate, and the most astonishing discovery awaits those who continue the journey. Every gate opens from the inside. Chapter 3. The Two Wolves. The forgotten battle happening every morning. There is an old teaching, often attributed to the Cherokee tradition, that has survived because it speaks to something timeless within the human heart. It tells of an elder sitting beside a fire with his grandson as dusk settled over the forest. The boy had begun to notice the contradictions inside himself. Some days he was generous, other days selfish, sometimes brave, other times fearful. He asked the elder why people seemed divided against themselves. The old man gazed into the glowing embers before speaking. "Inside every person," he said, "2 wolves are fighting. One wolf carries fear, resentment, envy, pride, anxiety, greed, and despair. The other carries faith, courage, gratitude, compassion, hope, humility, and peace." The child listened quietly before asking the question that has echoed across generations. "Which wolf wins?" The elder smiled. "The one you feed." Whether taken as a historical account or as a symbolic teaching, the story points toward a profound truth recognized by many wisdom traditions. The greatest battle in life is rarely fought against the world. It is fought within the landscape of our own attention. Every morning, before we speak a single word, invisible choices begin unfolding. We awaken carrying memories, expectations, fears, and hopes. Without realizing it, we begin feeding one of these inner forces. Some people immediately rehearse yesterday's disappointments. Others quietly remember what still remains good. Neither choice changes the facts of life in that moment, but each begins shaping the experience that follows. This is why ancient teachers placed such importance on the discipline of the mind. They knew that repeated attention eventually becomes character, and character quietly influences destiny. Fear rarely arrives shouting. More often, it whispers, "What if your savings are not enough? What if your health never improves? What if everyone eventually leaves? What if it is too late to begin again?" These questions are familiar, especially in the later seasons of life. Financial uncertainty can make the future feel fragile. An aging body may seem like evidence that possibilities are shrinking. Loneliness can persuade us that no one truly understands us. Regret can replay old decisions until the past feels more real than the present. The first wolf grows stronger each time these voices are accepted without examination. The Stoics understood this well. Epictetus taught that suffering often begins not with events themselves, but with the judgments we attach to them. The Buddha similarly observed that the untamed mind continually creates unnecessary suffering by clinging to fear, desire, and imagined futures. Though separated by geography and culture, both traditions pointed toward the same hidden battlefield. The struggle begins in attention. Imagine two neighbors entering retirement. Both worked faithfully for decades. Both face similar financial realities and similar physical limitations. Yet one spends every morning consuming stories of decline, comparing himself to wealthier friends, and rehearsing everything that might go wrong. The other acknowledges uncertainty, but chooses to cultivate gratitude for meaningful relationships, time to serve others, and opportunities still available. Their circumstances remain remarkably similar. Their inner worlds become entirely different. Over time, those different inner worlds influence different behaviors. One withdraws from life. The other continues learning, volunteering, exercising, connecting with loved ones, and discovering new purpose. The future begins to separate because attention has already separated. Modern psychology gives language to what ancient storytellers understood intuitively. Researchers describe habit loops, patterns in which repeated thoughts reinforce familiar emotions and behaviors. A fearful thought encourages avoidance. Avoidance reinforces fear. The cycle strengthens itself until it feels automatic. Yet psychology also speaks of neuroplasticity, the remarkable ability of the brain to reorganize itself through repeated experience. While the brain becomes efficient at repeating old patterns, it also remains capable of developing new ones. Every intentional act of gratitude, courage, patience, or compassion strengthens different neural pathways over time. The ancient elder spoke of feeding wolves. Modern science speaks of strengthening neural networks, different languages. The same principle. This does not mean pretending that pain does not exist. The wise never denied suffering. Marcus Aurelius buried children. Seneca experienced exile. The Buddha encountered sickness, old age, and death. None suggested that wisdom meant escaping hardship. Instead, they asked a different question. What part of your mind will hardship be allowed to nourish? Will disappointment deepen bitterness or deepen compassion? Will aging produce despair or greater appreciation for what remains? Will loneliness harden the heart or awaken empathy toward others carrying invisible burdens? Every difficulty quietly asks which wolf receives today's meal. There is another lesson hidden inside the story. The elder never promised that one wolf would disappear forever. Fear remains part of being human. Doubt still visits. Grief still arrives. Anxiety occasionally knocks at every door. Self-mastery is not eliminating these experiences. It is refusing to place them at the head of the table. Faith is not the absence of fear. Faith is deciding which voice receives authority. Every sunrise becomes another invitation. Every conversation becomes another opportunity. Every disappointment becomes another choice. Slowly, almost invisibly, daily decisions accumulate into a way of being. The wolf that grows strongest is rarely the one chosen once. It is the one quietly nourished thousands of times. The future is often less mysterious than it appears. It is frequently shaped by what we repeatedly allow to occupy our minds today. Attention is the food of destiny. Chapter 4. The Law of Attention. Whatever you feed begins to grow. Walk through an ancient garden just after sunrise. and you will notice something that every gardener understands without needing to explain it. Wherever water consistently flows, life begins to flourish. Flowers bloom, trees deepen their roots, and fruit appears in its proper season. Yet weeds obey the same law. They too grow wherever they receive light, water, and space. Nature does not argue with attention, it simply responds to it. The ancient philosophers believed the human mind followed a similar principle. Long before psychology described selective attention or cognitive habits, sages observed that whatever repeatedly occupied consciousness gradually shaped perception, emotion, and behavior. The mind becomes fertile soil. Whatever is planted and consistently nurtured begins to spread. This is the quiet law of attention. Most people imagine they are merely noticing reality. In truth, they are constantly selecting which parts of reality receive their awareness. Two people can walk through the same neighborhood. One notices abandoned buildings, litter, and signs of decline. The other notices children laughing, neighbors helping one another, gardens blooming beside old fences, and the warmth of a familiar greeting. Neither is entirely wrong. Neither sees the whole picture. Attention acts like a lantern in a vast cave. It illuminates one area while leaving countless others in shadow. The Stoics encouraged people to become guardians of this lantern. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that the quality of his life depended largely upon the quality of his attention. He understood that external events constantly compete for the mind, but inner discipline determines what is ultimately allowed to remain there. Modern psychology offers a complementary insight through the concept of selective awareness. The brain filters an overwhelming amount of information every second, highlighting what it believes is important. If someone becomes convinced that the world is filled only with threats, the mind becomes exceptionally skilled at finding evidence to confirm that belief. If another trains attention toward opportunity, kindness, and possibility, those patterns become easier to recognize. Neither person creates reality by thought alone, yet both participate in shaping the reality they consistently experience. Consider someone living with constant financial fear. Every unexpected expense becomes proof that disaster is approaching. Every news headline confirms scarcity. Every conversation revolves around uncertainty. Eventually, fear consumes the mental energy that could have been invested in learning, adapting, planning wisely, or serving others creatively. Fear has not merely occupied the mind. It has begun directing life. Gratitude operates differently. Gratitude does not deny difficulty. Instead, it refuses to allow difficulty to become the only story being told. A grateful person notices challenges while also recognizing unexpected blessings, faithful friendships, lessons learned, and opportunities still present. This balanced attention often produces greater resilience, clearer judgment, and renewed hope. The difference is profound. Fear narrows perception. Gratitude expands it. Possibility begins where attention broadens. The Taoist sages described this as living in harmony with reality rather than becoming imprisoned by mental resistance. They observed that people often exhaust themselves fighting imagined futures while overlooking the quiet wisdom available in the present moment. Every hour asks a silent question. What deserves your attention? Every answer becomes an act of cultivation. Like the gardener who chooses which plants to water, you are shaping the landscape of your inner life through thousands of seemingly insignificant moments. A single thought changes little, but repeated thoughts become attitudes. Attitudes become habits. Habits become character. Character quietly influences destiny. The ancient teachers were not asking us to ignore suffering. They were inviting us to become careful stewards of our mental energy. For wherever attention flows consistently, something begins to grow. Choose wisely. Chapter 5. The Oracle of Delphi. The command that terrified kings. Before anyone entered the sacred sanctuary of the Oracle of Delphi, where kings, generals, and philosophers sought divine guidance, they passed an inscription carved into the temple itself, simple enough for a child to read, yet profound enough to humble an empire. Know thyself. Of all the wisdom the Greeks could have engraved above the entrance. Why these two words? Why not know your enemy? Why not seek victory? Why not acquire wealth? Because the sages understood something history has repeatedly confirmed. A person who conquers nations while remaining a stranger to himself eventually becomes defeated by his own unseen nature. The command frightened thoughtful rulers because it shifted the battlefield. Instead of asking how to control armies or neighboring kingdoms, it asked a far more dangerous question. Who is the one seeking control? Socrates believed that the unexamined life was not worth living because a person who never examines himself becomes governed by impulses he mistakes for wisdom. Pride disguises itself as confidence. Fear masquerades as caution. Greed introduces itself as ambition. Vanity calls itself success. The greatest deceiver often speaks with our own voice. Ancient storytellers often illustrated this truth through kings whose downfall began long before their enemies attacked. One such tale tells of a ruler who traveled to Delphi after hearing rumors that a neighboring kingdom planned to invade. Determined to preserve his throne, he brought lavish gifts to the temple and demanded guidance. "Tell me," he asked the oracle, "how I may defeat those who threaten my kingdom." The priestess remained silent for a long moment before speaking words the king did not expect. "You seek the wrong enemy." Confused, the ruler insisted, "My enemy gathers soldiers across the mountains." Again she answered, "No, your greatest enemy eats at your own table." The king returned home irritated. He increased taxes to finance more soldiers. He strengthened the city walls. He questioned loyal advisors, suspecting betrayal everywhere. Every decision grew harsher because fear had become his unseen counselor. Years passed. No invading army destroyed his kingdom. His own arrogance did. Citizens abandoned him. Trusted advisors withdrew. His sons competed bitterly for succession. The kingdom slowly fractured from within until there was little left for any foreign army to conquer. Only then did the ruler finally understand the oracle's words. His greatest enemy had never crossed the border. It had ruled his own heart. Whether this account is history or symbolic teaching matters less than the truth it carries. Every civilization has observed that people rarely see themselves clearly. We notice flaws in neighbors long before recognizing similar patterns within ourselves. This is the blindness of self-ignorance. We imagine we act from reason, while hidden motives quietly pull invisible strings. Someone may pursue wealth believing they simply desire security, while beneath the surface lives an unhealed fear of inadequacy. Another relentlessly seeks admiration because childhood rejection still whispers that love must be earned. A third clings to control, not because circumstances demand it, but because uncertainty feels unbearable. The behavior appears rational, the motive remains hidden. Psychology now speaks of unconscious conditioning, defense mechanisms, and cognitive biases. Ancient philosophy described these realities differently, yet pointed toward the same mystery. Much of human behavior originates beneath conscious awareness. This explains why history repeats itself so often. Entire civilizations rise and collapse under recurring patterns of pride, greed, fear, and division. Families repeat emotional wounds across generations. Individuals leave one unhealthy relationship only to recreate similar conflicts elsewhere. Different places, different faces, the same unseen author. Until awareness interrupts the pattern, the unconscious continues writing tomorrow with yesterday's ink. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself to examine not only his actions, but the intentions behind them. Epictetus urged students to question every emotional reaction before accepting it as truth. The Buddha encouraged careful observation of the mind until hidden attachments gradually revealed themselves. Each tradition began with the same assumption: freedom begins where unconscious living ends. Many people spend decades trying to change external circumstances while protecting the very identity producing those circumstances. They seek different jobs, different relationships, different cities, or different opportunities, without questioning the invisible beliefs guiding every choice. Changing scenery rarely changes the traveler. The Oracle of Delphi invited something far more demanding. Become curious about yourself. Ask why certain criticism wounds you so deeply. Notice which compliments secretly control you. Observe what repeatedly provokes anger, envy, or fear. These reactions are not enemies, they are messengers. Every uncomfortable emotion carries a question about the hidden self. The wise do not silence the question. They listen carefully. Perhaps this explains why Know Thyself stood above the temple rather than inside it. Self-knowledge was not the reward received after entering sacred space. It was the doorway itself. The greatest discoveries seldom occur by traveling farther into the world. They begin by traveling honestly within. Every hidden motive brought into awareness loses some of its power. Every illusion recognized weakens its grip. Every honest examination makes tomorrow slightly freer than yesterday. The future is never written only by circumstances. It is also written by the person quietly interpreting them. The unknown self writes an invisible future. Chapter 6. Questioning the identity you secretly worship. Imagine meeting an old friend after 20 years. Before you finish your first conversation, they smile and say, "You've never changed." Most people receive those words as a compliment. Ancient wisdom would invite a different response. Shouldn't we have changed? Shouldn't life, loss, love, failure, responsibility, and time reshape the person we become? The deepest prison is rarely built from walls. It is built from identities that quietly convince us we have already become who we are. Human beings do not simply possess identities. They protect them. Someone repeats, "I'm just an anxious person." Another says, "I've never been disciplined." Someone else quietly believes, "I'm too old to begin again," or "People like me never succeed." These statements feel like descriptions. In reality, they become instructions. Every identity seeks evidence to preserve itself. This is why lasting transformation is so difficult. People often attempt to change behavior while fiercely defending the identity producing that behavior. A person declares a desire to become healthier while continuing to believe, "I've always lacked self-control." Another hopes to build meaningful relationships while secretly repeating, "No one truly stays." The subconscious hears the identity more loudly than the goal. Behavior quietly follows belief. The ancient mystery schools understood this principle long before neuroscience explored habit formation. They insisted that initiation was not merely learning new information, but becoming a different kind of person. The old self could not enter the new life unchanged. Modern psychology describes something remarkably similar. Habit loops begin with repeated thoughts and emotional patterns. Over time, these become automatic behaviors. Eventually, the behaviors reinforce the original identity. I avoid challenges because I'm fearful. I know I'm fearful because I avoid challenges. The loop strengthens itself. The prison begins to feel like personality. Neuroscience suggests that repeated thoughts strengthen familiar neural pathways, making them easier to access in the future. Ancient philosophers lacked that vocabulary, yet they observed identical patterns. Repeated attention becomes repeated action. Repeated action becomes character. Character becomes destiny. The good news hidden inside this truth is equally powerful. Identity is not fixed, it is practiced. Consider an elderly craftsman who spent 40 years believing he lacked creativity because he worked in a routine profession. After retirement, he reluctantly joined a woodworking group simply to pass the time. Week after week, he built simple pieces. Gradually, his confidence changed. He no longer said, "I'm not creative." He began saying, "I'm learning." Months later, he quietly admitted, "Perhaps I have always been creative. I simply never gave that part of myself permission to exist." Nothing magical occurred. His identity expanded because his daily actions gradually contradicted the old story. The Desert Fathers often spoke about watching one's thoughts like a gatekeeper guarding a city. Not every thought deserved entry. Not every inner voice deserved belief. Some identities are inherited rather than chosen. A parent repeatedly says, "You'll never amount to much." A difficult season whispers, "You're a failure." Society insists that worth depends upon productivity, appearance, or status. Eventually, these borrowed voices become mistaken for our own. The tragedy is not merely believing them, it is worshiping them. Every decision begins bowing before an identity that was never true. The philosopher Socrates encouraged relentless self-questioning because he understood that certainty often protects illusion. To question oneself was not weakness, it was liberation. Ask yourself quietly, who would I become if I stopped introducing myself through my fears? What abilities have I ignored because an old story convinced me they belonged to someone else? Which sentence have I repeated for years without ever testing whether it remains true? These questions are not exercises in positive thinking. They are invitations to honest observation. Change begins the moment identity becomes flexible. The future rarely belongs to the person with the strongest wishes. It belongs to the person willing to become someone new through repeated practice. So begin with language. Instead of saying, "I am always anxious," try, "I am learning calm." Instead of, "I have no discipline," say, "I am becoming someone who keeps small promises." Instead of, "It's too late," whisper, "I still have today." Small changes in description gradually become small changes in action. Small actions quietly become new habits. New habits slowly become a different life. You rarely behave according to what you hope. You behave according to who you believe you are. So examine the identity you have been protecting. Then, with humility and courage, Begin describing yourself according to the person you are becoming, rather than the person fear persuaded you to remain. Chapter 7. Buddha's Revolution. Why reality changes with perception. More than 25 centuries ago, a prince walked away from unimaginable comfort in search of an answer that wealth could not provide. Siddhartha Gautama had lived behind palace walls where suffering was carefully hidden from view. Yet, once he encountered sickness, aging, and death, a question arose that no luxury could silence. Why do human beings suffer? His search eventually led him beneath the Bodhi tree, where centuries of tradition tell us he awakened to a radically different understanding of the human mind. Among his most profound discoveries was this: suffering is shaped not only by what happens to us, but by the way the mind meets what happens. This insight was revolutionary. The Buddha did not deny pain. Hunger hurts, grief wounds, illness weakens the body, loss changes lives. But he distinguished between unavoidable pain and the additional suffering created by resistance, attachment, fear, and unconscious interpretation. In other words, two people can experience the same event and inhabit entirely different inner worlds. Picture two elderly friends who both retire after decades of faithful work. One interprets retirement as proof that his usefulness has ended. He withdraws from relationships, replays old regrets, and slowly loses curiosity about life. The other sees retirement as an invitation to mentor younger generations, deepen friendships, explore neglected passions, and finally cultivate the wisdom time has quietly prepared. The calendar says both men retired on the same day, yet they now live in different worlds. The event remained identical. Perception transformed the experience. The Buddha compared the ordinary mind to a restless monkey, leaping endlessly from one branch to another, remembering the past, fearing the future, chasing pleasure, avoiding discomfort, rarely resting in the present. Such a mind rarely sees reality clearly because it continually filters experience through habit and conditioning. Conditioning begins early. A child repeatedly criticized may grow into an adult who hears rejection even where acceptance exists. Someone raised amid constant scarcity may continue living with fear despite later abundance. Another person, wounded by betrayal, may struggle to trust those who genuinely care. These old patterns become invisible lenses. We stop realizing we are looking through them. Instead, we assume we are seeing reality exactly as it is. The Buddha gently challenged that assumption. He encouraged people to observe the mind itself. Notice the thought before believing it. Notice the emotion before obeying it. Notice the story before becoming imprisoned by it. This simple act of awareness creates space between experience and reaction. Within that space lives freedom. Modern psychology offers a similar insight. Cognitive scientists explain that people do not respond directly to events, but to the meanings they assign to those events. Attention filters information. Beliefs organize perception. Emotional habits reinforce familiar interpretations. Over time, these patterns become so automatic that they feel like objective reality. Yet, awareness interrupts automation. Imagine standing beside a river. Most people accidentally jump into every passing thought, allowing themselves to be carried downstream by worry, resentment, or fear. Meditation, contemplation, and mindful attention teach something remarkably different. Stand on the riverbank. Watch the thoughts flow. Not every thought deserves belief. Not every emotion deserves obedience. Not every fear predicts the future. This quiet observation gradually weakens the old conditioning. Life itself may remain uncertain, but the relationship to uncertainty changes. This explains why some people emerge from tremendous hardship with extraordinary compassion, while others become consumed by bitterness. Circumstances influence us, but they do not fully determine us. Awareness gives us another possibility. The Stoics arrived at a remarkably similar conclusion. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that events themselves possess no opinion. The mind supplies interpretation. Epictetus insisted that freedom begins when we distinguish between what happens and the meaning we attach to it. Separated by continents, Stoicism and Buddhism discovered the same hidden doorway, master perception, not by pretending everything is pleasant, but by seeing clearly. The older we become, the more valuable this wisdom grows. Aging brings unavoidable changes. Bodies slow, friends depart, familiar routines disappear. If identity remains attached only to youth, achievement, or certainty, suffering multiplies. Yet if awareness deepens, these same seasons can awaken gratitude, patience, humility, and quiet joy. The outer circumstances may not improve immediately. The inner experience often does. This is the Buddha's revolution, not escaping the world, seeing it without the distortions of unconscious conditioning. When perception changes, decisions change. When decisions change, habits change. When habits change, life gradually changes. The awakened person still walks the same earth as everyone else, yet they no longer inhabit the same psychological world. For the greatest liberation is not found by changing every circumstance. It begins by awakening the one who experiences them. Chapter 8. Epictetus and the Secret of Inner Dominion. Among the great teachers of the ancient world, few possessed less worldly power than Epictetus. He was not born into wealth, nor did he inherit influence. He entered life as a slave under Roman rule, owned by another man, and deprived of freedoms most people take for granted. Yet, history remembers him not because of what he possessed, but because of what no one could take from him. His body could be restrained, his choices could not. His circumstances could be harsh, his mind remained his own. This distinction became the foundation of one of the most enduring philosophies ever taught. Epictetus repeatedly reminded his students of a truth that seems simple until life tests it. There are things within our influence, and there are things beyond it. Peace begins when we learn the difference. Many people spend their lives attempting to govern the weather, the opinions of strangers, the past, the future, or the countless uncertainties that belong to existence itself. In doing so, they surrender the one territory that truly belongs to them, their own response. The Stoics called this inner dominion. It is the quiet kingdom that exists beneath every changing circumstance. One ancient story tells of a young Roman officer who traveled to hear Epictetus after returning from a difficult military campaign. Although he had survived battle, he remained haunted by humiliation after losing an important position within the army. "I have been ruined," the young man confessed. Epictetus looked at him calmly. "Who told you that?" "The emperor dismissed me." "The emperor removed your position," Epictetus replied. "Did he also remove your integrity?" The officer hesitated. "No." "Did he remove your courage?" "No." "Your ability to learn?" "No." "Your capacity to love your family?" "No." "Then tell me carefully," Epictetus asked. "What exactly has been ruined?" The young soldier sat in silence. For the first time, he realized that he had confused an event with an identity. His title had changed. He had concluded that he himself had become less valuable. The wound did not come only from losing rank. It came from the meaning he attached to that loss. This is the secret Epictetus spent his life teaching. Events happen, interpretations follow. Most people mistake the second for the first. Imagine two neighbors receiving the same diagnosis from a physician. Both face uncertainty, both feel fear, yet one quietly decides, "My life is over." The other says, "My life has changed, but today is still mine." Neither response changes the diagnosis overnight. Both responses profoundly influence how each person lives afterward. One withdraws from hope. The other embraces every remaining sunrise with greater gratitude. Circumstances begin the story. Interpretation often determines its direction. Modern psychology supports this ancient observation. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most researched approaches to emotional well-being, rests largely upon the understanding that beliefs and interpretations shape emotional experience. We are affected not only by events, but by the stories we tell ourselves about those events. The Stoics recognized this nearly 2,000 years earlier. They practiced noticing the first interpretation before accepting it as truth. A delayed opportunity becomes, "Life is against me." A criticism becomes, "I am worthless." A mistake becomes, "I always fail." Without awareness, these thoughts quietly become identities. Epictetus encouraged students to interrupt this process, pause, question the interpretation, ask whether another explanation exists, ask whether the mind is predicting disaster without sufficient evidence, ask whether pride, fear, or insecurity has quietly taken hold of the pen writing today's story. This is not denial. It is discipline. Mental discipline does not eliminate emotion. It prevents emotion from becoming an unquestioned ruler. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily in his private journal. Before reacting to insults or disappointments, he reminded himself that external events possessed no moral power by themselves. They became harmful only when he surrendered judgment entirely to impulse. How different would our lives become if we adopted this habit? A difficult conversation becomes an opportunity to practice patience. Financial uncertainty becomes an invitation to develop resourcefulness. Growing older becomes a season for deeper wisdom rather than quiet despair. Even regret changes its voice. Instead of saying, "I wasted my years," it begins asking, "What can these years still teach me?" This shift may seem small, yet entire lives turn upon such questions. Inner dominion is not gained in dramatic moments. It is cultivated in ordinary ones. When traffic delays you, when someone misunderstands your intentions, when plans unravel, when loneliness visits unexpectedly, when the mirror reveals another year has quietly passed. Each moment offers two possibilities: automatic reaction or conscious response. Every conscious response strengthens the inner kingdom. Gradually, the mind becomes less easily disturbed, not because life has become easier, because the ruler within has become wiser. The remarkable irony is that Epictetus, who owned almost nothing, became one of history's richest teachers of freedom. His wealth was invisible. No emperor could confiscate it. No market could devalue it. No misfortune could erase it. For the person who governs his own mind possesses a freedom greater than any throne can provide. Power over circumstances will always remain uncertain. Power over yourself can grow every single day. The Stoics never promised control over fate. They offered something infinitely more enduring. Master the interpreter, and you reclaim your life. Chapter 9. The Desert Fathers and the Kingdom Within. The ancient contemplatives discovered that true silence begins only after external noise fades, and the far greater noise inside the mind finally becomes visible. Only then do we encounter the endless conversations already taking place within us, the argument replayed for years, the fear about tomorrow, the regret about yesterday, the imagined criticism of others, the constant measuring of ourselves against impossible standards. The Desert Fathers discovered that many people spend their entire lives listening to these inner voices without ever questioning who is speaking. One famous story tells of a young seeker who journeyed into the desert to ask an elderly monk how he might find peace. "I have prayed," the young man said. "I have studied. I have worked. Still my thoughts never leave me." The old monk handed him a wooden cup filled to the very edge with water. "Walk across the monastery courtyard without spilling a drop." The young man concentrated so completely upon the cup that he barely noticed anything around him. When he returned, the monk smiled. "Did you hear the birds?" "No." "The wind?" "No." "The voices of the other brothers?" "No." "You attended completely to one thing." The monk paused. "Now learn to attend your own mind with the same devotion." The lesson was subtle. Peace is not always found by changing the world around us. Sometimes it begins by changing the quality of our attention. The Desert Fathers understood something modern neuroscience continues to explore. Attention shapes experience. Whatever consistently occupies awareness gradually influences emotion, memory, and behavior. If the mind continually rehearses fear, fear becomes familiar. If it repeatedly practices gratitude, gratitude slowly becomes more natural. Silence allows us to notice these hidden rehearsals. Yet silence can feel uncomfortable at first. Many people discover that when distractions disappear, long-ignored emotions quietly emerge. Loneliness speaks. Old grief returns. Regret knocks gently upon the door. The ancient contemplatives did not consider this failure. They considered it the beginning. Healing rarely starts with escape. It begins with honest seeing. Another elder compared the human heart to a pond. When constantly stirred, the water remains cloudy. One cannot see its depth, but when left undisturbed long enough, the mud slowly settles, and what was always present becomes visible. The soul follows a similar rhythm. Stillness reveals. This is why the Desert Fathers often practice solitude, not because they rejected humanity, but because they hoped to return to humanity with greater compassion. They discovered that people who cannot sit peacefully with themselves often seek endless distractions from themselves. Eventually, they become strangers to their own inner life. Within the contemplative traditions emerged another remarkable insight. There is a difference between the stream of thoughts and the quiet awareness observing them. Thoughts come and go. Emotions rise and fall. Memories appear and disappear. Yet something quietly witnesses each one. Today, some psychologists describe this capacity as the observing self or metacognitive awareness. Ancient mystics simply invited people to discover the silent observer through prayer, contemplation, and attentive presence. This discovery changes everything. If you can observe fear, you are not identical to fear. If you can witness anger, anger is not your deepest identity. If you notice anxious thoughts arising, there remains within you an awareness untouched by those passing storms. The observer becomes an anchor. Life continues changing. The observer remains. This realization gradually softens the tyranny of constant mental chatter. The inner dialogue no longer possesses absolute authority. You begin asking, is this thought true? Is this fear useful? Must I believe every story my mind tells? These questions create space. Within that space grows freedom. Our modern world offers remarkable convenience but unprecedented noise. Devices compete for attention. Opinions arrive without invitation. Endless information leaves little room for reflection. The Desert Fathers might gently remind us that the greatest conversations still happen in silence, not because silence contains magical answers, because it finally allows us to hear the wisdom that noise continually interrupts. The kingdom within has never disappeared. It has simply been drowned beneath distraction. Every quiet morning, every unhurried walk, every moment of grateful reflection, every deliberate pause before reacting, these become small returns to that forgotten kingdom. The ancients entered the desert to discover that the deepest sanctuary was never merely a place. It was a way of seeing, and the observer waiting quietly beneath every passing thought has been there all along, patiently waiting for you to notice. Chapter 10. The Philosopher Who Feared Nothing, Diogenes and Radical Freedom. History often remembers kings by the empires they built, generals by the battles they won, and wealthy merchants by the fortunes they accumulated. Yet every so often, a person appears who possesses almost nothing and still becomes impossible to conquer. Such a man was Diogenes of Sinope, the wandering philosopher whose life challenged nearly every assumption his society held about success, security, and happiness. Diogenes owned few possessions. He slept wherever he found shelter, carried only what was necessary, and deliberately rejected the endless pursuit of comfort that consumed so many around him. To most people, he looked poor. To Diogenes, he had never been richer. He believed that the greatest prison was not poverty but dependence, dependence upon praise, possessions, status, or the opinions of others. The more a person required from the world to feel complete, the easier that person became to manipulate. Freedom, he insisted, begins where unnecessary dependence ends. One afternoon, as the story has been told for centuries, Alexander the Great approached Diogenes. Alexander had conquered much of the known world before the age of 30. Cities opened their gates at the mere mention of his name. Kings surrendered before his armies arrived. His power seemed almost limitless. Curious about the strange philosopher who appeared unmoved by wealth or authority, Alexander sought him out. He found Diogenes lying peacefully beneath the warm morning sun. Standing before him, the conqueror announced with confidence, "I am Alexander the Great. Ask of me anything you desire, and I will grant it." Most people would have requested land, gold, influence, or protection. Diogenes looked up only briefly before replying, "Yes, please step aside. You are blocking my sunlight." For a moment, the silence itself became the lesson. Alexander possessed armies. Diogenes possessed freedom. One ruled nations, the other ruled himself. "Legend," says Alexander later remarked, "if I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." Whether those exact words were spoken matters less than the truth they reveal. Even the most powerful ruler recognized a kind of wealth that conquest could never purchase. Diogenes had nothing the emperor could threaten, nothing he could bribe, nothing he could take away. That is the strange arithmetic of radical freedom. When happiness depends upon constant approval, criticism becomes terrifying. When identity depends upon status, failure becomes unbearable. When peace depends upon possessions, every loss becomes a catastrophe. But when contentment arises from character, simplicity, and self-knowledge, circumstances lose much of their power to enslave us. This does not mean possessions are inherently harmful. The ancient philosophers did not condemn honest work or material comfort. Rather, they warned against allowing possessions to become possessors. There is a profound difference. One person owns a beautiful home. Another is owned by the fear of losing it. One enjoys financial success. Another spends every waking moment protecting an image of success. Outwardly, they appear similar. Inwardly, they inhabit different worlds. Modern life quietly encourages dependence in countless forms. Many people begin each day measuring themselves through numbers, bank balances, social recognition, titles, achievements, or the opinions of strangers. Their emotional weather changes according to forces they cannot fully control. The cynics, especially Diogenes, challenged this entire arrangement. What remains, they asked, when applause disappears? The question unsettles us because it reaches beneath appearance. Imagine an elderly craftsman who devoted 40 years to his profession. Upon retirement, the title that once defined him quietly vanishes. For months he feels invisible, as though his value departed with his occupation. Eventually, he begins teaching young apprentices simply because he loves the craft. Without realizing it, he rediscovers something far deeper than recognition. His work no longer serves his identity. His identity now enriches his work. This transformation mirrors the freedom Diogenes described. Character replaces reputation. Contribution replaces applause. Being replaces appearing. The wealth of character grows precisely because it cannot be purchased. Integrity cannot be inherited. Wisdom cannot be stolen. Courage cannot be transferred through contracts. Compassion cannot be manufactured by wealth. These treasures belong equally to the poor and the powerful. In fact, history repeatedly shows that some of humanity's richest souls possessed remarkably little. Consider the older woman who quietly visits lonely neighbors every week without expecting gratitude. The retired teacher who continues helping children learns simply because education still matters. The grandfather whose stories preserve hope through difficult times. None appear on lists of the world's richest people, yet countless lives become richer because they lived. Diogenes would likely call them truly prosperous. Psychologically, this freedom reflects a profound shift from external validation toward internal stability. When identity depends primarily upon inner values instead of fluctuating circumstances, resilience naturally increases. Setbacks still hurt, but they no longer destroy one's sense of self. Freedom grows quietly, not because life becomes easier, because fewer chains remain attached to the soul. There is another lesson hidden within Diogenes' famous encounter with Alexander. Notice that Diogenes did not insult the emperor. He simply refused to worship what others worshipped. He recognized that power impresses only those who secretly depend upon it. The person who needs the least cannot easily be controlled. This truth remains remarkably relevant. Advertising persuades by convincing us we are incomplete. Comparison persuades by suggesting someone else's life defines our worth. Fear persuades by promising safety through endless accumulation. Yet every time we discover contentment independent of those voices, another invisible chain quietly falls away. This is not withdrawal from life. It is participation without slavery. Own what is useful. Enjoy what is beautiful. Appreciate what is given. but never confuse temporary possessions with permanent identity. For eventually every title fades, every possession changes hands, every applause grows silent. Only character continues walking beside you. The greatest freedom is not having everything. It is no longer believing you need everything. Freedom begins where dependence ends. Chapter 11. Faith without certainty. There is a kind of faith that demands guarantees before taking a single step. It waits until every question has been answered, every risk removed, and every path illuminated. But there is another kind of faith, older, quieter, and far more resilient, that has guided pilgrims, philosophers, and mystics through centuries of uncertainty. It is the faith that walks before certainty arrives. The ancient contemplatives never claimed that life would become predictable. They understood too well the fragility of human plans. Crops failed, kingdoms rose and collapsed, loved ones died, illness appeared without invitation. Entire civilizations learned that certainty is one of life's rarest possessions, yet many of history's wisest men and women discovered something stronger than certainty. They discovered trust. The Desert Fathers often spoke of faith not as the absence of questions, but as the willingness to remain faithful. While questions remained unanswered, they withdrew into harsh landscapes where there were no guarantees of comfort, recognition, or even physical safety. To an outside observer, their lives seemed unnecessarily difficult, but the desert taught lessons that comfort rarely could. When every distraction disappeared, they encountered the deepest habit of the human mind, its endless desire to control tomorrow. One old story tells of a young monk who arrived in the Egyptian desert, eager to master every spiritual discipline. He carried books, notebooks, carefully written prayers, and a long list of questions for the elder who agreed to receive him. The old monk listened patiently before asking only one question. "Do you trust God?" "I do," the young man replied quickly. "Then why?" the elder asked gently. "Do you spend every waking hour trying to control what only tomorrow can reveal?" The young monk had no answer. His prayers had quietly become negotiations. His planning had become disguised fear. His search for certainty had prevented him from discovering peace. Many of us recognize ourselves in that young seeker. We tell ourselves that if we save enough money, plan carefully enough, anticipate every danger, and prepare for every possibility, then finally we will rest. Yet life has always remained larger than our calculations. Faith begins where complete control ends. This is not an invitation to abandon responsibility. The Desert Fathers worked diligently, cultivated gardens, copied manuscripts, and served those around them. They prepared wisely, but they refused to confuse preparation with control. The distinction is profound. Preparation is an act of responsibility. Control is often an illusion. Centuries later, the German mystic Meister Eckhart echoed this wisdom through remarkably simple words. He taught that the soul discovers its deepest freedom not by grasping more tightly, but by learning to let go. He described surrender not as weakness but as openness, a willingness to release the endless struggle to force life into our preferred design. For Eckhart, the greatest obstacle to peace was not uncertainty itself, it was attachment to certainty. He observed that many people cling so tightly to expectations that they cannot recognize unexpected blessings arriving in unfamiliar forms. Imagine a traveler determined to reach a distant city by one particular road. Halfway there, a bridge collapses. Furious at the delay, he curses the interruption and reluctantly takes another route. Days later, he learns that a terrible flood destroyed the original road entirely. What first appeared as misfortune quietly became protection. Life often reveals its meaning only after time has passed. Faith allows us to continue walking before every explanation appears. The Stoics admired this same inner posture. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that events belong to the larger order of existence, while his responsibility remained focused on responding with wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. He did not ask for certainty. He cultivated steadiness. This is mystical trust, not blind optimism, not denial, not pretending that pain does not exist. It is the quiet confidence that even in seasons of confusion, one can continue choosing integrity, compassion, and patience. Older generations often understand this truth more deeply than younger ones. Those who have lived long enough know that life's most meaningful chapters were rarely planned in advance. The unexpected friendship, the career that emerged from failure, the grandchild who transformed an ordinary afternoon into a treasured memory, the illness that unexpectedly deepened gratitude. Looking backward, the scattered pieces sometimes reveal a hidden coherence. Looking forward, they rarely do. Faith, therefore, becomes less about predicting the future and more about faithfully inhabiting the present. Psychologically, this changes everything. Fear continually asks, "What if everything goes wrong?" Faith gently replies, "Whatever comes, I will meet it one faithful step at a time." Notice the difference. Fear imagines disasters before they arrive. Faith prepares the character that will meet tomorrow, whatever tomorrow contains. This shift reduces unnecessary suffering because attention returns to what can actually be lived today. One quiet conversation, one honest decision, one generous act, one grateful breath. These become expressions of faith, not dramatic miracles, daily trust. There is another paradox the mystics love to explore. The tighter we grasp life, the more anxious we become. The more gently we hold it, the more peacefully we live. A gardener cannot force seeds to sprout by pulling upon them each morning. Growth happens through patient cooperation with processes larger than immediate desire. Water faithfully, tend carefully, wait humbly. Human transformation follows much the same rhythm. The person constantly demanding immediate results often becomes discouraged. The faithful person quietly continues practicing. Character grows, wisdom deepens, peace expands almost unnoticed. By the time others ask what changed, the answer is difficult to explain. Nothing dramatic happened. 1,000 faithful choices quietly accumulated. The Desert Fathers understood this better than most. The greatest victories occurred in hidden places where no applause existed. A fearful thought observed but not obeyed, an insult forgiven, an anxious night endured with hope instead of despair, a lonely season transformed into deeper compassion. These invisible triumphs eventually shape visible lives. Faith without certainty does not remove mystery. It teaches us to walk peacefully within it. For certainty belongs to very little in this world, but faithful living remains available every single day. Chapter 12. The Fear That Quietly Writes Your Future. Few forces have shaped human history more consistently than fear. Entire kingdoms have gone to war because of it. Families have been divided by it. Dreams have quietly disappeared beneath it. Yet the most influential fears are rarely the loudest ones. They whisper, "What if I never have enough? What if my health continues declining? What if I become a burden?" What if no one truly understands me? What if I have wasted my life? These quiet conversations, repeated often enough, begin shaping the future long before external circumstances do. Not because fear possesses magical power, because fear influences perception, choices, habits, relationships, and opportunities. It quietly becomes a hidden author. An old story tells of a merchant who carried 2 leather bags wherever he traveled. One contained gold coins, the other contained stones. Curiously, every evening he counted the stones far more carefully than the gold. When asked why, he answered, "I fear losing what weighs me down more than I appreciate what sustains me." Many people, unknowingly, live the same way. They count dangers more faithfully than blessings. They rehearse disasters more often than possibilities. Attention slowly trains expectation. Expectation quietly influences behavior. Behavior gradually shapes destiny. Financial anxiety offers a clear example. There is wisdom in planning carefully, saving responsibly, and preparing for difficult seasons. Prudence has always been admired by the ancient teachers. But anxiety is something different. Anxiety repeatedly imagines future scarcity, until the mind begins living inside imagined shortages, even during seasons of genuine sufficiency. One person carefully manages resources while remaining grateful. Another, despite greater wealth, cannot sleep peacefully because fear continually whispers that tomorrow will surely take everything away. The difference lies less in income than in inner relationship. The same pattern appears with aging. Many people begin speaking to themselves as though their most meaningful years have already ended. "I'm too old. My best days are behind me. It's too late." These sentences become invisible instructions. The body hears them. Behavior follows them. Curiosity declines. Learning slows. Hope quietly withdraws. History repeatedly contradicts this story. Some of humanity's wisest contributions emerged during later life. Philosophers refined their deepest insights. Artists created their greatest works. Elders became mentors whose influence extended far beyond their own lifetimes. Age changed their bodies. It did not imprison their purpose. Health fears can follow a similar path. The body deserves wise care. Medical guidance, healthy habits, and realistic preparation all matter greatly. Yet endless worry rarely improves physical well-being. It often drains the very emotional strength needed for healing, adaptation, or peaceful acceptance. Fear spends tomorrow's energy before tomorrow arrives. Loneliness carries another hidden danger. The lonely mind often begins interpreting every silence as rejection, every delayed message as abandonment, every unfamiliar face as further evidence that meaningful connection has become impossible. These interpretations create withdrawal. Withdrawal reduces opportunities for relationship. The feared future quietly becomes more likely. Again, it is not fate. It is the subtle influence of perception upon action. Perhaps the most destructive fear speaks through negative self-talk. "I always fail. I'm not capable. I've missed my chance. No one values what I have to offer," repeated often enough. These thoughts become internal identities. The Stoics would have challenged every one of them, not with empty optimism, with disciplined examination. Is the thought true? Is it useful? Does it encourage wise action? Or does it merely preserve old wounds? The Buddha invited similar awareness. Observe the thought. Do not immediately become the thought. The Desert Fathers went even further. They carefully watched recurring inner dialogues, believing that every repeated conversation either strengthened freedom or strengthened captivity. They knew that every life eventually becomes shaped by its most frequently rehearsed story. Fortunately, stories can be rewritten, not overnight, but deliberately. Responsibility becomes the turning point. Fear says, everything depends upon circumstances. Responsibility asks, what faithful action remains possible today? The person afraid of financial uncertainty begins learning, planning wisely, and practicing generosity instead of obsession. The one afraid of aging begins mentoring, exercising, learning, and appreciating the wisdom only years can provide. The lonely person reaches outward with one conversation instead of waiting endlessly to be rescued. The discouraged soul replaces harsh self-condemnation with honest self-respect. Notice what changes. The future no longer belongs entirely to fear. It begins belonging to responsibility. This is not about pretending fear disappears forever. Even courageous people feel afraid. The difference is that they no longer allow fear to become the principal author of tomorrow. Instead, they quietly hand the pen to wisdom. Every day presents that same choice. Fear will gladly continue writing your future if you surrender the page, or you may begin writing differently. One responsible decision, one hopeful thought, one grateful action, one faithful step at a time. For the future is often shaped less by dramatic moments than by the quiet conversations we choose to believe today. Chapter 13. From Victim to Conscious Creator. Every civilization has told stories of people who were transformed. Some were kings who became wise after defeat. Others were wanderers who discovered purpose in exile. Some were ordinary men and women who suffered loss so profound that they could no longer return to the person they once believed themselves to be. Although their stories differ, they often follow the same invisible pattern. Transformation does not begin when circumstances change. It begins when consciousness changes. The ancient mystery schools hinted that human growth unfolds through stages. Modern psychology, though using different language, often describes a similar progression. The names vary, but the movement remains remarkably familiar. Victim over creator, conscious creator. These are not titles, they are ways of relating to life. Most people begin in the first stage without realizing it. The victim is not simply someone who has suffered. Every human being encounters genuine hardship. The victim mindset develops when suffering becomes the permanent explanation for identity. Life is experienced as something that constantly happens to us. My family ruined my future. My age limits my possibilities. The economy controls my happiness. My past determines who I must remain. Such statements often arise from real pain. Compassion is always necessary. Yet, if these stories become permanent, they quietly imprison the future. Ancient Stoic philosophers observed this tragedy repeatedly. Two people could experience similar losses, yet one gradually rebuilt, while the other remained trapped for decades. The difference was not always circumstance, it was relationship to circumstance. One old tale speaks of two farmers whose crops were destroyed by the same violent storm. The first spent years telling neighbors about the injustice of that single night. The second mourned honestly, then quietly began planting again. Years later, visitors saw only one flourishing orchard. The storm had visited both men. Only one allowed it to define the rest of his life. The second stage begins with a remarkable discovery. The observer awakens. The observer notices thoughts without immediately believing them. It notices fear without surrendering to it. It notices anger without becoming consumed by it. This is the revolution taught by the Buddha, refined by the Stoics, and rediscovered by modern psychology. Between an event and a response lies awareness. Within that awareness lives freedom. Imagine standing beside a river. Leaves float upon the current. You do not chase every leaf. Thoughts behave similarly. Some announce failure. Others predict disaster. Some replay old regrets. The observer quietly notices each one passing. I am having this thought. Not, this thought is my identity. That single shift changes everything. Many people never realize they possess this capacity. They mistake every emotion for a command, every fear for a prophecy, every criticism for absolute truth. The observer gently interrupts that illusion. From observation emerges the third stage, the creator. Here, a person begins accepting responsibility for what can actually be influenced. Attention, habits, speech, character, daily choices. Notice what changes. The creator no longer asks only, "Why did this happen?" Instead, another question quietly appears. Given what has happened, who will I choose to become? This question carries extraordinary power. An illness becomes an invitation to cultivate patience. Financial hardship becomes motivation to learn wiser stewardship. Retirement becomes an opportunity to mentor younger generations. Loss deepens compassion rather than bitterness. The external event may remain painful. The internal response begins creating an entirely different future. This is why ancient teachers emphasized discipline over wishful thinking. Destiny is rarely rewritten through dramatic inspiration alone. It changes through repeated choices. A kind word spoken when anger feels easier. A walk taken despite discouragement. A book opened instead of another hour of complaint. An apology offered before pride hardens. These small decisions accumulate quietly. Years later, they appear to others as wisdom. Finally comes the fourth stage, the conscious creator. This person no longer seeks merely personal success. Awareness naturally expands beyond the self. Life becomes less about acquisition and more about contribution, less about proving worth, more about expressing it. The conscious creator understands that every conversation plants seeds, every attitude influences a household, every act of generosity quietly changes another life. A grandmother telling stories to her grandchildren, a retired teacher encouraging one struggling student, a neighbor visiting someone living alone. These moments rarely appear in history books, yet history itself is quietly built from such invisible acts. The conscious creator also understands that circumstances remain unpredictable. Storms still arrive, bodies still age, loss still visits, yet something profound has shifted. Life is no longer interpreted solely through fear. It is approached with participation. There is another ancient story about an old potter whose apprentice asked how beautiful vessels were made. The master placed a lump of clay upon the wheel. "What makes this beautiful?" the apprentice asked. "The hands," the potter replied. "The wheel, the fire," the old man smiled. Unalone, it becomes beautiful because every stage cooperates. So too does human transformation. Pain alone cannot create wisdom. Neither can knowledge alone. Observation without action remains incomplete. Action without awareness becomes mechanical. Only together do they gradually shape a different human being. This is the forgotten meaning of creation. It is not first about controlling external reality. It is about consciously participating in the creation of oneself The person who learns this secret no longer waits for life to improve before living intentionally. They begin today. One conversation, one habit, one act of courage, one moment of gratitude, one quiet decision at a time. For the greatest masterpiece most people will ever create is not a monument, a business, or a fortune. It is the person they become while living. Chapter 14, The Second Birth. There comes a moment in many lives when people quietly whisper the same painful sentence. It is too late. Too late to change. Too late to forgive. Too late to begin again. Too late to become the person they once hoped to be. The ancient sages would have answered, with remarkable gentleness, no, as long as life remains, another beginning remains possible. Many traditions spoke of what might be called a second birth, not a return to physical infancy, a rebirth of consciousness. The first birth introduces us to the world. The second introduces us to ourselves. The first happens without our permission. The second requires our participation. Ancient alchemists described this transformation through the image of lead becoming gold. Mystics spoke of awakening. Philosophers described it as self-knowledge. The language changed. The invitation remained the same. Become new. One beautiful story tells of an elderly gardener who had spent decades cultivating magnificent trees. A violent storm eventually destroyed nearly everything he had planted. Neighbors expected despair. Instead, they found him kneeling quietly in the soil, placing fresh seeds into the earth. "Why begin again?" they asked. "You may never live long enough to see these trees mature." The old gardener smiled. "I planted the first forest, knowing someone else would enjoy its shade." Then he added, "Hope always plants." Those words contain profound wisdom. Hope is not naive optimism. Hope is disciplined participation in possibilities not yet visible. The greatest obstacle to this second birth is often not failure. It is the stories we continue carrying. "I've always been this way. My family never changes. I made too many mistakes. If only I had started 20 years earlier." Such stories feel permanent because they have been repeated for so long. Yet repetition does not transform fiction into destiny. The Buddha taught that attachment includes attachment to identity itself. The Stoics insisted that every new day offers another opportunity to practice virtue. The mystics encouraged continual renewal of heart. All pointed toward the same possibility. You are more than yesterday's story. Of course, releasing old stories does not mean denying the past. The past matters. It teaches, it shapes, it leaves scars. But scars need not become prisons. Imagine carrying an old suitcase filled with stones. For years you assume the weight is simply part of traveling. Then one day someone asks why you continue carrying rocks collected decades earlier. The question surprises you. You had forgotten you were free to put them down. Forgiveness often begins this way. Many misunderstand forgiveness as pretending no wrong occurred. The ancients viewed it differently. Forgiveness releases the future from permanent captivity to the past. It does not erase memory. It transforms relationship. Sometimes forgiveness is extended toward another, sometimes toward oneself. Many older adults carry hidden guilt over decisions made long ago, words spoken in anger, children not understood, dreams abandoned, relationships neglected. These memories quietly whisper, "You no longer deserve peace." Yet wisdom asks another question. What good grows from lifelong self-condemnation? Repentance may teach, responsibility may repair, but endless shame rarely heals. Forgiveness becomes an act of courageous honesty. It says, "I cannot rewrite yesterday, but I refuse to allow yesterday to write every remaining page." This is why second chances appear throughout human history, not because people suddenly become perfect, because they finally become teachable. One retired businessman spent decades believing his worth depended entirely upon professional success. After retirement, profound emptiness settled over him. For months he wandered through familiar routines, feeling invisible. Eventually, he volunteered at a local literacy program. He expected to teach reading. Instead, he rediscovered purpose. Children did not care about his former title. They cared that he believed in them. In helping them grow, he quietly experienced his own second birth. Nothing external announced it. No ceremony, no applause. Only a different way of living. Transformation at any age remains possible because consciousness never stops learning. Neuroscience speaks of neuroplasticity. Ancient philosophers simply observed that habit could always be retrained. The elderly monk still learns patience. The grieving widow still discovers gratitude. The discouraged retiree still finds purpose. The lonely neighbor still becomes a friend. The next chapter of life is never written solely by chronology. It is written by willingness. There is something deeply comforting about this truth. It means your greatest contribution may still lie ahead. Your deepest peace may still be discovered. Your most meaningful conversations may not yet have happened. Your wisest years may still unfold, not because life becomes easier, because you become different. The second birth does not erase the first life. It redeems it. Every sorrow becomes a teacher. Every failure becomes wisdom. Every wound becomes compassion. Every ending quietly prepares another beginning. The ancients never promised that everyone would avoid suffering. They promised something far more hopeful. No matter how long you have wandered, no matter how many wrong turns have been taken, the journey home can begin today, not tomorrow, not after perfect circumstances, today. For the greatest miracle is not that life occasionally offers second chances. It is that the human spirit retains the astonishing ability to become new, even after many years. Every sunrise quietly asks the same timeless question: who will you choose to become now? Chapter 15. Quantum Manifestation, the law that changes reality in seconds. Many imagine that transformation arrives like lightning, that one thought, one ritual, one whispered phrase can instantly rearrange the entire world. The ancient teachers rarely spoke that way. They knew that genuine transformation is both more immediate and more demanding. The miracle that happens in seconds is not that the world suddenly changes around you. It is that your way of seeing the world changes, and from that moment onward, every decision, every relationship, and every action begins moving in a different direction. This is the deeper meaning behind what many now call quantum manifestation. The instant change occurs within consciousness. The visible changes unfold through countless faithful choices made afterward. Imagine a traveler climbing a mountain before dawn. In darkness, every stone appears threatening. Every shadow seems like a cliff. His heart races because his mind cannot clearly perceive the path before him. Then the first rays of morning appear. The mountain itself has not changed. The rocks remain where they were. The distance has not shortened. Yet everything is suddenly different because light has arrived. Nothing outside moved. Everything inside did. The ancient philosophers repeatedly pointed toward this mystery. The Stoics insisted that suffering often comes not from events themselves, but from the judgments we place upon them. Buddhist teachers explained that attention shapes experience and that liberation begins when we observe the mind instead of blindly obeying it. The Hermetic tradition taught that inner order gradually expressed itself in outer life. Different languages. One timeless principle: reality begins changing the moment perception changes. This is why two people can experience the same hardship while walking away with entirely different lives. One loses employment and concludes, "My life is over." Another loses employment and quietly asks, "What new chapter is trying to begin?" The circumstance is identical. The future is not. A single interpretation can redirect decades. History quietly preserves similar lessons. When the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius faced plague, betrayal, and endless warfare, he continually reminded himself that external events could challenge his body, his kingdom, and his plans. But only he could surrender mastery of his own character. His empire trembled around him, yet his greatest labor remained internal. His greatest victory was invisible. Many older adults understand this truth more deeply than younger generations. There comes a season when careers end. Children build lives of their own, bodies grow slower, and many dreams remain unfinished. It is tempting to believe the most meaningful chapters have already been written. Yet countless people discover their deepest wisdom precisely when life strips away everything that once defined them. Retirement becomes reflection. Loss becomes compassion. Illness becomes gratitude. Loneliness becomes the invitation to know oneself more honestly. The event does not automatically produce wisdom. Consciousness does. That is why transformation begins in seconds but matures over years. The instant you stop saying, "Life is happening to me," and begin asking, "What is life teaching me?" an entirely different future quietly begins. The same home feels different. The same family appears different. The same memories acquire new meaning. The same challenges become training rather than punishment. Ancient teachers understood that purpose is not something found waiting in the future. It is cultivated through daily participation in the present. Every morning offers another opportunity to practice gratitude instead of complaint, courage instead of avoidance, generosity instead of fear, patience instead of frustrations. Small choices become invisible architects. Eventually, those small choices become habits. Habits become character. Character quietly shapes destiny. This is why faith occupies such an essential place within every wisdom tradition. Faith is not certainty that every plan will unfold exactly as imagined. It is the calm willingness to continue walking wisely even when tomorrow remains unseen. Farmers plant before harvest appears. Builders lay foundations before walls exist. Parents love children long before they witness the adults they will become. Every meaningful creation begins with trust. The ancients knew something our hurried age often forgets. Becoming always precedes receiving. Many people ask how they can manifest greater prosperity. Fewer ask whether they are becoming trustworthy enough to manage greater responsibility. Many ask how they can attract better relationships. Fewer ask whether they are becoming more patient, compassionate, and emotionally steady. Many ask for peace. Few consistently practice peaceful thoughts. Life often mirrors who we repeatedly become, not perfectly, not instantly, but remarkably often. Perhaps this is why the deepest mystical traditions devoted so little attention to acquiring possessions and so much attention to transforming perception. They believed that the greatest miracle available to any human being was awakening from unconscious living. A person who awakens no longer spends every day reacting. They begin responding. They stop chasing every fear. They choose principles instead. They no longer wait for perfect conditions. They become the kind of person who quietly creates better conditions wherever they stand. This is the true law that changes reality in seconds, not because mountains instantly move, but because the person climbing them finally sees the path. And once the path is seen, every faithful step begins carrying them toward a life they could never have reached while walking in darkness. The greatest manifestation is not acquiring a different world. It is becoming a different presence within the one you already inhabit. This journey began with a simple but unsettling possibility. Perhaps the greatest forces shaping your life have never been entirely outside you. Perhaps your habits of attention, your interpretations, your fears, your hopes, and your character have always been quietly participating in the future you experience. That realization changes everything. Throughout these pages, we have walked beside philosophers, mystics, emperors, monks, and seekers from civilizations separated by oceans and centuries. They disagreed about many things, yet they repeatedly returned to the same enduring insight: freedom begins within. We explored the alchemist's fire, where every genuine transformation begins by releasing an old identity rather than decorating it. We passed through the 7 gates of self-mastery, discovering that awareness, discipline, humility, patience, courage, faith, and wisdom are not destinations but lifelong companions. We listened to the Cherokee teaching of the 2 wolves and remembered that attention quietly feeds the future we eventually inhabit. We stood before the oracle at Delphi and heard the ancient command that has unsettled kings and ordinary people alike: know thyself. We walked beside Hermes Trismegistus and discovered that changing perception gradually changes experience through wiser choices and steadier action. We learned from the Buddha that suffering often grows from the stories the mind continually repeats. Epictetus reminded us that our interpretations possess enormous influence over our peace. The Desert Fathers led us into silence until we encountered the observer hidden beneath the endless conversation of the mind. Diogenes demonstrated that the person who depends upon little cannot easily be controlled. The mystics revealed that the deepest kingdom is discovered not through endless noise, but through inward stillness. Faith became less about certainty and more about courageous trust. Fear lost much of its power whenever responsibility quietly took its place. Finally, we discovered that manifestation is not primarily about obtaining things. It is about becoming someone. This distinction may appear small, but it changes an entire life. Many people spend years trying to rearrange circumstances, while neglecting the consciousness meeting those circumstances. Ancient wisdom gently reverses the order. First cultivate clarity, then strengthen character, then practice gratitude, then act with integrity. Over time, those invisible disciplines begin expressing themselves through visible results. Sometimes external change arrives quickly. Often it unfolds slowly. But inner freedom can begin today. Perhaps that is the true meaning behind the title of this journey. Reality can begin changing in seconds because perception can begin changing in seconds. The first courageous thought, the first honest question, the first act of forgiveness, the first moment of gratitude, the first decision to stop rehearsing fear and begin practicing wisdom. These moments may seem small. History suggests otherwise. Entire civilizations were shaped by individuals who first transformed themselves before attempting to transform the world. Socrates questioned assumptions. The Buddha questioned suffering. Marcus Aurelius questioned his own reactions. The mystics questioned the restless ego. Each discovered that the deepest revolutions begin invisibly. Now the invitation becomes personal. Every morning presents another opportunity to choose awareness over distraction, purpose over passivity, compassion over resentment, faith over fear, responsibility over blame. These are not dramatic gestures. They are sacred habits. One day becomes another. One decision becomes another. Eventually, an entirely different life quietly emerges. Not because fate suddenly favored you, but because your inner world